and welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thank you for joining me. Another video that I wanted to do for my new Astro Musings series is I want to talk to you guys a little bit about my interpretation of the nodal changes that have happened recently. Now the North Node has moved into Taurus and the South Node has moved into Scorpio, where it will remain for the better part of the next year and a half. We already got a little bit of a snippet of this flavor back in mid-November when we had a eclipse actually in the sign of Taurus. The nodes had not changed yet, but that was kind of getting us ready. It was like the dress rehearsal before the nodes actually moved into Taurus and Scorpio. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about that. We might branch off and actually talk a little bit about also the importance of watching Mars and Venus, at least throughout the first couple months of the year. I plan on doing another video as we get closer, but I was trying to pull on some inspiration and kind of seeing what I could dig up in some of my books and just kind of going through my knowledge, my pre-existing knowledge of mythology and how this might kind of relate to the nodes, especially over the next couple of weeks. So I wanted to wait until the nodes had fully moved into these new signs, and then I also wanted to wait until Mars got into Capricorn so we could have Mars and Venus actually in the same sign of Capricorn, so we can kind of get a vibe for this. The conjunctions have not happened, but it's now getting within about 10 degrees of Venus, so we're going to begin to start feeling the effects of this pretty soon. So let's talk a little bit about the North and the South Node. Obviously, we could go on and on and on about this. Everybody has their own interpretations. I feel like me personally, being somebody who works with evolutionary astrology, I look a lot at the nodes and I look a lot at Pluto. So obviously I'm super stoked to see the North Node and the South Node being here, because there's going to be lots of Pluto talk with the South Node being in Scorpio. And also, as we speak, Pluto is in a trine to the North Node in Taurus. So Pluto's been in Capricorn, it's been there for 14 years, really kind of showing us this breakdown and this decay of old existing power structures in our lives, right? So whether it's the foundation of a house or just family units breaking down, big business breaking down, governments breaking down. With Pluto, we always see decay and changes. So being that Pluto is the Pluto is the modern day ruler of Scorpio, and Mars is the traditional ruler of Scorpio, to each their own, but I'm definitely going to look at both because, oh my goodness, the next couple weeks we see lots of energy because Mars, Venus, and Pluto are going to align actually at the beginning of March of 2022. So like I said, we'll do another video probably as we get closer, but we're already kind of in the energies now. All right, so the North Node in astrology, it oftentimes is something that's unachievable, right? It's that thing, that mountaintop that's oh, I don't know if I can get to the top of that. I don't know if I know how to do that. It's very mysterious and unusual. So whether we're talking about this in transit or in the natal chart, it's usually something that we don't always have the best knowledge of. And it's something that we strive for, though. We can become very fixated and very obsessed with our natal North Node placement. So the nodes change signs about every 18 months. We see that the nodes are actually in some of the same places as these dates. So the last time that we saw the nodes hanging out in Scorpio and also in Taurus was back in February of 1966 through August of 1967, September of 1984 through April 1986, April 2003 through December of 2004, and just now it moved in January on the 19th, and it will be the nodes will be in this placement until July of 2023. So we got a hot minute. But the North Node, like I said, is something that we both can feel we're incapable of achieving, but also something that we really strive for. So we can become very fixated, especially our natal North Node. Now, our South Node is something that's our comfort zone. We've been there. We have lots of knowledge. It's something that comes easily to us. So if you were to look at your South Node in your natal chart, it's just kind of like the blessings and maybe even like the karmic stuff that comes from your past life that you're just carrying over. So it's kind of where you've been. There can be pitfalls, though, to the South Node. So it can be a place where we get too comfortable, we get too kind of lenient, we kind of fall into doing those same patterns or those same kind of lessons over and over. So why do we have the nodes? We have the nodes because the whole purpose of basically coming back, right, onto this planet and reincarnating and kind of willingly going through and playing the game of life, we're here to clear stuff. We're here to learn. We're here to elevate. We're here to evolve, right? We want to ascend, ideally, off the planet. I know it sounds kind of weird, but we're here to ascend and to kind of clear whatever we haven't learned, what we haven't gotten right, what we haven't kind of mastered, and we'll just keep coming back here until we learn how to do that. So yeah, I could go on and on about the nodes, but I really want to focus on how they relate in transit. So the North Node has moved into the sign of Taurus, and Taurus is a fixed earth sign. It's ruled by Venus. Traditionally, it's the ruler of the second house, so it's about materialism, what tastes good, what feels good, what smells good, what brings us a sense of security, yeah, just anything that we're really kind of investing into, right? So it's also about our personal self-worth. Taurus does not, we don't talk about that enough. And we also don't talk about the simplicity that Taurus can actually bring to a person. So everybody's got one of the 12 zodiac signs in their natal chart. So, you know, look at your second house or maybe look at where you have Taurus in your natal chart to better understand where you're going to be having some more unusual experiences over the next 18 months. Now, the North Node in Taurus is going to really remind us the importance of balance between material and spiritual, right? It's also going to remind us that it's important in order to find that balance, we have to remain calm. We have to focus on security. We have to focus on safety. We have to get back down to our basic necessities. We have to simplify. Taurus is very simple in a sense of you know, you just need a little bit of dirt and some water and some sunlight and you can make magic happen, right? So when I say finding the balance between material and spiritual, I think it's going to be an interesting situation because I think it's really going to simplify spirituality. I think it's going to teach people that security and stability and finding that groundedness can actually come from changes in our values, changes in our food, changes in what we find security in or how we define security. That's kind of what I'm anticipating. This nodal transit is very different because it's peppered with a lot of outer planet aspects. So, you know, as we go through the next year, especially, we're going to see that the North Node in Taurus is going to be making trines to Pluto in Capricorn, which is very empowering. You know, whenever we see a trine from Pluto in the North Node, it's positive opportunities to transform, which is why the Capricorn area of your chart right now is so important to be paying attention to, because there's something majorly under reconstruction that's actually aiding and supporting the direction where we're going with the North Node. So the first 3 months of this year is actually amazing because it's almost like the construction site or like the testing grounds for where we ultimately want to be seeing physical changes once the sun comes into Taurus and we start having the eclipses this spring. So right now you guys got to be kind of doing your digging and your heavy work and really kind of clearing things out and kind of sorting and sifting through what you do or do not want to continue working on, working through issues with guilt. That's a big thing with Capricorn, and just where we're working too hard or where our goals are really not in alignment with where we want to go. Certainly when we're talking about Taurus and Capricorn, you know, these are very earthy, hardworking, goal-oriented, financially motivated signs. So we can be seeing people who are becoming more fixated on how do I bring in more? How do I have more earning potential? How do I transform my financial outlook? How do I plan for long-term financial security? So there's a lot of this going on right now. It's happening, obviously, given just coming off the heels of where we've been with the pandemic for the last 2 years, but also I think a lot of it is just about redefining what we find to be valuable, and wealth may not necessarily be something that is going to be looked at as a dollar amount. So the Pluto aspects are very interesting, not to mention the fact that also we are going to see later in the summer, the North Node in Taurus is going to align with Uranus and Taurus. So there is a hard upgrade, realignment, something very unusual, very different, very unique in regards to resources or food. So that may materialize as things like lab-grown meats become more readily available. Maybe there's going to be all kinds of manufactured new food materials. Uranus is futuristic and unusual, and as is the North Node. The North Node is very hard to kind of identify or understand. It's new, right? So we're going to see innovations in food, and I think we're going to hear a lot about shortages and issues with food supplies, and where we need to either ration things or where we need to be kind of innovating how we're eating and how we're fueling our bodies. Now, on one hand, it can be positive because I could see like large groups of people coming together, growing food, really caring about knowing where their food comes from and that it's safe and it's secure and they don't have to worry about whether or not they have enough. On the flip side, I have concerns about like government, basically telling everybody, we're running out of food. Cattle's going to be something that we can't do anymore for environmental reasons. We're not going to be able to farm animals as much, which I'm neutral on. I see both sides of it. Then they may start kind of like creating these like faux meats, and like we don't know what they're made of, and we don't know what's in it. We don't know if it's healthy. We don't know if we're being fed grasshoppers or if we're eating, pieces of cement that's been kind of thrown in with just lab-grown cells. So I have some concerns about that. I think that the North Node Uranus conjunction is also going to play a huge role in just an earthquake type situation, literally or quite figuratively, in the markets and in our money. So we're already kind of seeing that right now. If you guys haven't already seen my Pluto return video that I did a couple months back, I talked all about this period and what would be going on, and we're definitely seeing kind of the bloodbath play out financially right now, at least in the US markets. So, kind of coming off of that, I would say there's almost like this breakdown happening, at least in the United States chart, and it's definitely affecting the US dollar. We're going to see inflation, I think, continue to rise. I think we're also going to continue to see greed rise, and we're going to see high highs and low lows all year. So that we're going to ride this roller coaster, right, in terms of straddling the line between what it means to feel secure, North Node in Taurus, and South Node in Scorpio, whether or not we're getting triggered by loss, fear, not having enough, death, things like that. Whenever you're looking at Scorpio and Taurus, it always represents money and wealth and assets. Taurus represents more what you physically own, what you bring in. It's the money you make. It's what you have. And Scorpio represents the access of the 8th house and other people's money. So whether that's insurances, payouts, settlements, it can be spousal support, it can be government support, it can be inheritances, payoffs from investments, things of that nature. So kind of shifting gears a little bit and looking at the South Node, certainly one of the biggest topics that I've kind of thought of is just how we're really seeing trauma in the body, right? Because the North and the South Node play off of each other. They have to have that opposition in order for us to learn where we're coming from, what we want to carry with us that actually supports us going into the future, and what's time to kind of release and let go of. So the South Node in Scorpio, ruled by Mars and Pluto, is going to bring up some really hot topics relating to trauma, death, pain, fear, what we know about death. loss of resources from other people. I think there's going to be some probably big crises going on in regards to insurance companies, people that may not necessarily be capable of getting life insurance policies, people who might actually lose inheritances because perhaps maybe their older relatives didn't invest it well, or maybe, you know, they are on hard times, so when the time comes, they may not have as much that they receive. The South Node in Scorpio also is reminding us that we cannot live a life that is including impulsiveness, scarcity tendencies, manipulation, jumping to conclusions, and taking things to the extreme, right? So, you know, Scorpio gets a bad rap for like being the seductress, but I think that Scorpio can both be either the poison or the remedy. It depends on how you decide to use it. So on one hand, I could see where we might see all kinds of new innovations and new drugs and new things that can come about because Scorpio does rule like pharmaceuticals. And it can show us where we can actually find healing in natural ways that we weren't aware of. Like, I wonder if we're going to start seeing treatments for, you know, major health ailments that come about in very natural ways, or maybe that they're using, you know, new venoms and other things to be able to kind of like reverse issues with health and health problems. I'm also noticing that Neptune and Jupiter will trine the South Node at some point, so that can be like miraculous healing, things that are removed from the body. We're going to learn more about mysticism, spirituality, psychic healing, things of that nature. So I'm excited to see what kind of happens with that. Now, the South Node in Scorpio also does talk about what's been concealed, what's been hidden in the dark, deep dark secrets, things that involve mysterious topics, or things that might be a little bit more unsavory. So we're going to see the South Node in Scorpio is actually going to release possibly information, or just releasing and not giving as much power to darker energies on this planet. So some people might say, oh, okay, great. So, you know, the dark is starting to kind of break down and it's losing its power, and we're not going to see as much greed or manipulation taking place. Yeah, but it's going to have to be highlighted first. So I think this is also not just going to be about abusive power, but abusive power financially, and where there's been a lot of either manipulation that's gone on financially, or where you know, central banking is just really screwing people over and just kind of breaking them over the coals with expenses and charges, and really not allowing people to thrive and to feel secure, right? So there's going to be triggers that will come up with the South Node in Scorpio that relate very specifically to whether or not we feel safe or secure. So grounding work is so important, kind of leaning on that North Node in Taurus, supporting the body, eating well, really working with the throat chakra, and also working with the root chakra, communicating when we feel scared, communicating what we need, learning to let go of sexual trauma, and not always feeling like love is possession. I think that's something else that's going to come up a lot. You know, Venus rules Taurus and Mars rules Scorpio, and Venus and Mars are star-crossed lovers. They love each other, but when they are getting entangled later this year and kind of mixed up with Pluto, it's going to bring up extreme passionate feelings in relationships, in resources, in really kind of giving us an opportunity to either break down or break through when it comes to what we find important, what we love, what we value, right? So I was kind of digging through and just getting some more insight and kind of, I guess, like inspiration for this talk today. Excuse me. The Mars and Venus, you know, conjunction that is going to be happening is actually going to start closer to right around February 12th, and that will be at 14 degrees of Capricorn. And it's still going to be in a slight trine to Uranus, so it's kind of got some sparklers kind of connected to that. But that's when we're first really going to start seeing that we have the ruler of the North Node and the ruler of the South Node coming together. So it's interesting because Mars represents this very passionate, kind of heated, warrior-like energy, exalted in Capricorn. So it's not reckless like maybe like Aries. It's more kind of grounded and steadfast, and it's got a plan. It's trying to execute something. And then Venus, which represents the divine feminine and women or peace, harmony, they're together. So on one hand, I think of like, okay, in mythology, we think about wars being started because Mars and Venus were separate and they weren't able to come together. And, wars were always over a woman and there was always all this strife when the two were apart. But when they came together, everybody was, making love and they were having parties and they were eating all these like, rich foods and just indulging and listening to music and being in bed and all of these things that Mars and Venus really love doing together. So that's the positive side of this, is that we can see both the past and the future collectively working together starting right around February 12th. And Mars and Venus are going to move together for quite some time, actually. They're going to connect again around February 18th through the 20th. Then we're going to see Mars get ahead again, and then they will connect once again on February 24th. Very passionate days. And then we see the two connect again, and that'll be on February 28th, and that'll be at 25 degrees. And then finally, I guess the big moment that I'm waiting for is going to be when Mars, Venus, and Pluto all align at 27 degrees, and that'll be on March 2nd, 2022. Now, Mars and Venus will still continue to move. They're then going to go into the sign of Aquarius, and we'll talk about that because there's going to be some more challenging aspects there because Venus is going to kind of get enclosed between Mars and Saturn. So that will be rockier. But I feel like on these dates that I've mentioned, and really all the way up until early March, the past and the future are supporting each other. It's like, where have we been? What didn't work? What was scary? What hurt? What was painful? And where are we going? And how can we build towards that? So I can see that there's like a lot of momentum and build up with just the divine masculine and the feminine working together, with business partners working together, strategizing, planning, getting very passionate, especially with all of the trines that it's making to the North Node in Taurus, right? So there's a lot of real solid, stable, productive energy that we're experiencing right now to kind of focus more on where we would like to be in May, right? At the same time, we also see that all of these planets are making sextiles to Jupiter, and they're making sextiles also to Neptune. So Jupiter and Neptune together is very spiritual, very much like meditating, reflecting, manifesting, visualizing, dreaming, strategizing, believing, right? Jupiter and Neptune is believing. So what I love about these two signs in support in terms of a sextile to one another is that we have to actively work towards achieving our dreams, right? We have to make them a reality. And by the same token, a lot of things are going to be winding down and clearing out. So really probably the most kind of structured, stable, logical period would be between now and March. We are going to have some hiccups, obviously, in adjusting as we get to mid-March on. We'll talk about that when we get there. But my advice is to really reflect on the past right now and where you have been in the past and what you had to let go of, what you lost, what was painful, who passed, what ended, in order to really help you strategize moving forward, but also reminding yourself how far you've come. It's very important whenever you're looking at Scorpio and Capricorn. Yes, this hurt, but it only hurt for a minute. The pain was short, and then, well, look what came of it. So what you made, right? How you made lemonade. The most challenging aspect I think we're going to experience with the nodal changes is not even necessarily going to be Uranus on the North Node, although that's going to be probably the climax, right? At the end of July, beginning of August. I think it's actually going to be more the fact that we're going to see Saturn square the nodes. And it's been my experience in seeing that in just in transits and also in natal charts is that's kind of a moment in time where Saturn goes, okay, now it's time. We have to make this change. So we've got the North Node and the South Node in Taurus and Scorpio. We've got, Uranus that's also in Scorpio. We've got Saturn that's in Aquarius. These are all fixed signs. Fixed signs are very reluctant to change. They have this aversion to change because they know how to do something very well. They're like, well, I've been given this task. I just have to keep doing it this way. They just keep laying the bricks, so to say, right? They keep, focusing on what they're building towards. So I have shared with a lot of my clients already in the last couple of weeks, things are going to come in steps this year. We have to learn to crawl before we can run. So you want to take things 3 months at a time. Really the emphasis between now and March, I think, is just really looking at the area of your chart that has Capricorn. Are your goals in alignment? Is it working for you? Do you like your job? How are you dealing with power struggles? What can you change and what can you transform? The energy is only going to be building from here on out. That's why I bring this up now. A little bit also just some inspiration that I got when I was thinking about Venus and Mars, and I was thinking about some of their just connections in mythology. And I think back to what happened when Venus and Mars actually got caught in a net. There was like a golden net. So basically, like, Venus was married to somebody else. She was kind of cheating with Mars because he was like this hot, sexy man that she was always in love with. She was married to Vulcan. And basically, she was unfaithful, and she got caught not being honest and like in this really kind of passionate kind of connection with somebody else. So just kind of digging through this, I guess I feel like this might really shine a light on the Pluto connection, and where Pluto can also be all of the trappings that are coming up at the beginning of March, of where we become too obsessed and too passionate and too fixated on things and materialism or goals, to the point of almost like kind of being like ruthless, right? So when I think about what happened with Venus and Mars kind of getting exposed in this way, I think of, well, does this talk about us getting too passionate and too fixated on our desires to a point where it's actually doing us a disservice? It's actually breaking things down. It's making things toxic. It's not allowing us to really kind of see the bigger picture. So once again, sweet and salty, right? We can see where the Mars, Venus, Pluto can be super passionate and fixated on transforming our goals, transforming our relationships. But by the same token, it can be way too much. So I think we're going to think a lot about like human emotion and desire, and what is and is not healthy. And I guess the other way that I would look at it is like, are we willing to do dirty deeds in order to get what we want? Evil deeds may not necessarily be allowed to kind of move forward with a free pass, and where we have a tendency to fall into sin and obsession, right? And not in like a religious way, but more in just I want the money so much I'm willing to do anything, right? I want the relationship so much I'm willing to manipulate, I'm willing to sabotage. So many planets moving into Aquarius is actually really going to teach us the true essence of love and harmony, and the importance of also practicing sovereignty, and really knowing that we can't be so fixated on having other people or other things that we're willing to do anything, that we're willing to kind of sabotage and manipulate and control. That love is not possession. Love is giving people or experiences the opportunity to come in. Kind of think of like the strength card in a way, right? So I think we're going to be thinking a lot about this. Obviously, I'll touch more on that. Hopefully this was insightful for you guys. Just a little snippet. Also, just want to talk to you guys a little bit about where the North and the South Node is moving for each and every one of the 12 signs, just to give you a little bit of food for thought to think about. So for Aries and Aries rising, the North Node and South Node are moving into the axis of your 2nd and your 8th house. So the North Node is going into your 2nd house. The South Node is going into your 8th house. So you may be one of those people with the Mars, Venus, Pluto connection that's happening in Capricorn. You're having like a breakup with an old identity. It can be that some of you guys are leaving relationships after long periods of time. Some of you guys are breaking up with your job because you're realizing that there's got to be more to life, right? There's got to be not an easier way, but a more fulfilling way to be able to bring in resources, to find more independence, you may start kind of collaborating with other people because you have Uranus that's coming into conjunction with your North Node later this year. So the North Node in Taurus in your second house is going to have you thinking about your money, your resources, what you create, what you bring in, right? What you're able to make happen. And you'll become very fixated on that. And the South Node going into your second house, the South Node going into your 8th house is going to bring up all of these themes revolving around releasing trauma, releasing fear of not having support, dealing with death. You may experience a situation where you actually lose, to some extent, some kind of resource, like some kind of support system. So maybe you'll lose some kind of an insurance. You'll have a partner that goes through a change in their resources and their finances, and they may not be as supportive. So there's usually something that's removed from your 8th house. So it puts emphasis on your second. The second house is also self-esteem. The second house is what you eat. The second house can deal also with your throat, or jewelry, or crystals, rocks, cooking, connecting with the earth. So you may get really fixated in a sense of some of these like earthly things, and you might start focusing more on just like cooking skills. That's something else that I've seen sometimes with the North Node going through the second, and just becoming more aware of where your food is coming from and what you're doing with it. For Taurus and Taurus rising, so the North Node is going through your sign. So it's either moving through your ascendant, your sun, or your moon. So you want to look at, if it is your sun or your moon, what house it rules. I would also recommend, if you're a Taurus, make sure you're reading your rising sign as well, not just your sun sign, because the rising sign is also going to tell you how that's going to physically play out. Now, the North Node in your sign is going to bring attention to you. What you want, what you need, what feels good to you, what you value, and you're very much still kind of changing and transforming. So there may be this big grand reveal of this is who I really am, or this is how I really want to dress, or this is how I really want to look at some point later this year. Now, the eclipses happening in your sign are also going to bring about big changes for you personally, and you're kind of stepping into who you really are. So when you have the eclipses and the South Node going through Scorpio, which is 7 houses from your sign, it does represent kind of breaking off and letting go of toxic, old, outdated relationships and partnerships. It's not always romantic relationships. It can be people who you're in business with, or people who you make money with, because it's Scorpio. It can remove and break down certain relationships that are not healthy or are not allowing you to be your most authentic self. So breakups, divorces, separations, business separations, friend dumping, these things can kind of come with some of the eclipses this year. Some people may feel as if you're being very unusual or different or extreme. So that's something else that I would just kind of let you know. You are experiencing squares from Saturn, and that's technically 10 signs from your sun. So it can be about having breakdowns with business partnerships, old places you used to work, issues with bosses, maybe wanting to really redefine who you are out in the world, focusing on your public image, and growing and expanding. And as you do that, you have to kind of change and kind of shift with what's going on with the eclipses in your 7th house. So I have seen sometimes with these transits also, there's a need for you to really be authentic and not just focus on material goods. You have to focus on who you want to become, and not necessarily in a sense of how you look, but what you value, and valuing yourself. And good relationships will stay as long as you're really in alignment with that, okay? So for Gemini and Gemini rising, we've got the North Node going through your 12th house and the South Node going through your 6th house. So the North Node going through your 12th house is very mystical and very spiritual. It can be about what's going on globally in the world. It can be about what you think about, or what you're working on, or what you're creating behind closed doors. You may be somebody who's focusing more on art and film, or learning more about art and film because it's going through the 12th house. It can be you learning about foreign travel, or working in private spaces, or working behind the scenes. So there can be a lot of you building and doing things behind the scenes. I especially think about this because Jupiter is in your 10th house right now. So it makes me kind of feel like you're having lots of expansions in your career, but maybe you're kind of working with people globally or people all over, or you're working in these private spaces where like you're the mastermind, right? North Node in the 12th is very spiritual, but When it's in Taurus, it's very grounded. So it's practical ways of kind of learning more about spirituality and also just healing in general. The 12th house does deal with healing centers. So I think of hospitals, I think of mental health hospitals, I think of temples, I think of churches, private offices, prisons, you know, foreign places. So somehow you're hiding away and you're working on something and you're healing something, or you're working on your craft and you're perfecting and beautifying something. Now, the South Node in your 6th can represent changes in where you're working, how you're working, your daily work routines, moving out of toxic work environments or schedules. You can have some conflicts with coworkers. That is very possible. You may also be somebody who experiences letting go of bad habits, right? So if you eat all the junk food, if you feel like you have an unhealthy relationship with sex, if you feel like you don't have a healthy work schedule, you're not getting enough rest, and there in turn you're having, you know, issues, digestional issues, reproductive issues, hormonal issues. These can all come about as a result of Scorpio. So you'll learn that the more that you're nurturing and taking care of your 12th house and like really resting more, taking down time, exploring the subconscious and what's going on spiritually, the more that you can actually release and like let go of toxic behavior or patterns. So I would really recommend, you know, having some kind of like a spiritual counselor or working with a therapist if you're really struggling with some of these things, especially if it's food, drug, or sex addiction. It can be really helpful in moving through that and kind of figuring out why you have a tendency to lean on those habits so you can actually clear it out and you can feel better in the body, and also really just show up for some of the amazing things that are happening in your career this year. For Cancer and Cancer rising, so this is the North Node moving through your 11th house, and this is the South Node moving through your 5th house. And so this is an interesting one because the North Node in your 5th house in Taurus, the North Node in your 11th house in Taurus is all about friends and organizations and groups and working with people, and maybe you're making money with friends, maybe you're working on a project with friends, maybe you start a group garden. There can be a sense of you wanting to get more active in a group or a network. Maybe you want to join a club. Maybe you want to be learning more about money and resources online. Maybe friends are talking to you about that because it is Taurus. Anything group oriented is like really positive, and it's like really steering you in the direction of either starting something or participating in something, and really focusing on your friendships and like what friendships can actually bring you, and that they might bring you more harmony. The challenge is that you are experiencing Saturn squares. So you've got Saturn that's now in your 8th house. So whenever you're mixing, you know, friendships and money, things can get a little messy. Whenever you are not changing and transforming and letting go of your fears and your phobias, it's actually also holding you back and hindering you from being able to go deeper into your friendships. If you're having crisis and issues in relationships or your intimacy, I would say it's really important to lean on those friends. You need people who you can talk to. Shutting down is going to make it very difficult for you to be able to feel like you're a part of the collective. Friend breakups can happen, especially with Uranus in the 11th house. And you may feel like friends are not being understanding, or that friends are kind of being a little erratic. That's something else that can kind of come up for you. And then you've got the South Node that's in your 5th house. So it's almost like learning to release and let go of this need of feeling like you need to be the center of attention, right? So when we move from the 5th house to the 11th, it's from the self and the ego and what you create to what you're creating with the group. So maybe you're pivoting a little bit and just learning that it's not all about what you're creating. It's not all about what you're doing. It's how you're working with a group. Some of you guys may have some challenges with children, or just with your love life in general, because the 5th house does deal with like love, and it deals with children, pregnancy, joy. So there can be challenges in regards to children or getting pregnant for some people with this placement. Other ways that this can manifest is with the eclipses in the South Node is releasing and letting go of childhood trauma, especially if there's sexual trauma, because it's in Scorpio. And ways of doing that, it might be really beneficial for you to participate in group therapy. Art classes can be really helpful. Art therapy can be really helpful. And the South Node in the 5th house can also just kind of crack the heart wide open and kind of show you where you've been kind of evading being authentic and really expressing yourself properly. Lots of good, yummy, creative energies can come through this as well, though. So where something is released, something comes in. If you are about to become an empty nester, or you've got kids that are going off to college or leaving, or maybe you're grieving the loss of a child, that's something else that can sometimes come through the eclipses with the South Node in the 5th as well. For Leo and Leo rising, we've got the North Node in your 10th house of career and the South Node in your 4th house of family and roots. So this is an interesting one, Leo, because you are one of the signs that is going to be experiencing a grand fixed cross all year long. And I say this because you're going to have planets or some kind of placements in all of the other fixed signs. So when we have placements in Scorpio and Aquarius and also Taurus, it's all putting pressure and creating a huge square to your personal placements in Leo. You've experienced this a little bit in this last year with Jupiter and Saturn. I think maybe you got the brunt of it in Scorpio season. So that's a little bit of like a snippet of what you may experience for the next year ahead. One thing that I would say is like, take it easy. You got to take things 3 months at a time, be patient. When you experience these grand fixed crosses, usually at the end of the year, it has really made the wheel of your chart turn. You may identify completely differently in the world. You might have a better job, a healthier relationship status. You might live somewhere new. So lots of change comes, but it all affects each other. So as planets kind of go through the fixed signs roughly every 3 months, you're going to experience these changes. I guess in layman's terms, the best advice I can give you is February is really all about relationships and partnerships and what is and is not working. And you benefit from learning how to be a better partner or a friend. And even if that means cutting people loose because something's not working. The 10th house is also going to be a real emphasis. And that's going to be for you in May in regards to your career and your status in the world. July and August is all going to be about you, your body, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. This is when you're going to experience quite a bit of friction with people because you're standing up for yourself and making changes to your body and your identity. And then when you get into Scorpio season, it's all going to be about your home and what you're releasing and letting go in regards to your home, your family, or your emotions. So having the North Node in your 10th house is awesome. It's like you become the person who's in the driver's seat of your own life. If you want to get ready to launch businesses, get career promotions, change your status, really kind of rise to the top in regards to your career and your own personal ambition, that can and will happen. But it's going to require other areas of your life to change. So you're going to feel the friction with family and home. You're going to feel the friction with relationships because you're really going after what you want, and you're learning to be more assertive, but not in a way that's like pushy, in a way that's just, hey, this is what I need, this is what I value for security, I got to do this. With the South Node in your 4th house, you may release a home, let go of a home, move, make a decision that you need to cut a family member off. You might need to clean out and restructure or remodel a home because it's Scorpio. It can also represent losses in the family or losses in regards to real estate. So be really careful with those investments this year, making purchases. You might make a purchase with a home and you might find out that there's something wrong with it, and you want to make sure it's thoroughly inspected, especially anything relating to plumbing or potential water issues or mold issues. You really want to look for that because I think of toxicity is Scorpio, and it's also making trines to planets in your 8th house. Now on the flip side, some of you guys might inherit property, or you might get money from somebody and then you put it into property. So that's the other way that can kind of pan out. Really dealing with emotions and letting things go, and it can be losses in the family or death or burials can also be associated with the 4th house. For Virgo and Virgo rising, you've got the North Node going through your 9th house. The South Node is going through your 3rd house. So the 9th house represents your connection to God, your belief system, what you're learning, where you're traveling, where you're going, foreigners. It can be about advertising, publishing, higher education. You may benefit from learning new techniques and going and taking art classes or workshops. You may have a fixation on relocating and moving overseas or going on a further away trip or move. I would say that would probably be coming up a lot for you in the spring. Some of you guys may opt to go back to college. Some of you guys may opt to extend your education in general and go for higher levels of education and want to learn more, especially in the 9th house. It's about money, resources, travel, or the arts. So I've seen like a lot of people go back to school and go get like their master's in fine arts, or, you know, they go and take classes and like really perfect something they already know how to do very well. So that way they can do more. Advertising, publishing also comes under this guise. Sometimes gurus show up in this house as well, and people who really kind of help you come into what you're meant to learn. So that's something else that I would look for. With the South Node in the third, you might release a vehicle, let go of a connection with a sibling or a close family member. You can have some strife with neighbors. You're more predisposed to having issues with cars and vehicles or accidents, so be careful of that. I think of Saturn in your sixth house squaring, so there can be updates that you have to make with laptops, computers, and stuff for work. New training that you have to do, and also kind of realizing that the mind, body, spirit aspect of health is very important. You have to find that balance all around. You can't just work out and eat well and keep everything clean and tidy, and not be doing the spiritual upkeep and learning and kind of clearing that's necessary to kind of feel well-rounded all around. The South Node in the third house also was really referencing like letting go of negative thought patterns or ways that you communicate that can be a little harsh, and like learning how to communicate a little bit better, and like not learning to be so what's the word, like not particular, but like not nitpicking to a point where it's mean, right? Like, you know, Virgo is like very detail oriented, and they're very capable of kind of spotting what's wrong. But I think that what you're going to be working on is like how you communicate and maybe come across to other people, and especially when it comes to like coworkers or just teaching or relating in general. You're less fixated on all the details, because the South Node's in the third. You're more fixated on the bigger picture, so you might get kind of overwhelmed with like having to break things down and show things to people, because you're so focused on where you're going, right? So we've got Libra, and this is the North Node in your 8th house and the South Node in your 2nd house. This is interesting for you because being a Libra or a Libra rising, your whole life is about finding balance and the difference between you and other people, and learning more about yourself through others, because your chart is inverted. So you already off the bat have to do both. You may be one of the signs that experiences both of this. So it may not just be the traditional energy of the North Node in the 8th, which is usually bringing in more money, more resources, learning about psychology, learning about healing, learning about the occult, metaphysics. It is about death in the other side. It is about other people's money and resources. So with the North Node in the 8th house, you're like learning to make your money work for you, trying to focus more on maybe dividends, things that are paying off, residual income, making money through other people, having other people invest in you, getting loans, and possibly even inheritances. That's something that you might deal with throughout this next year. Partners can make more money, which in turn can kind of benefit you. There might be more just changes going on in how you relate to money psychologically in general, especially with Uranus being in the mix later this year. With the South Node being in your 2nd house, it's about releasing and letting go of one stream of income, but it's to rely more so on what you're receiving. So I've seen this manifest as like some people hit the lottery and they're like, oh, well, now I don't have to worry about money. So now what do I do with it? Or some people get a big inheritance and then they're like, well, now I don't know what to do because I don't have to work all the time. What do I do with my resources? Do I spend it? Do I invest it? The South Node in the 2nd does shift the energy away from focusing on you being the sole earner or you being the sole person to figure out your resources, and you get support in some way. The other thing I would look for is that the South Node in the 2nd house is like making changes in what you're eating in your diet, and like removing any toxic foods or any issues with self-esteem from your life. That's very, very, very important for you. I think about Saturn also squaring for you in the 5th house, and it's like really focusing on making work that is more creative and trying to make work feel more fun, and letting go of this need to just produce and focusing more on quality rather than quantity. So there can be like opportunities for you to get investments so you can start businesses, but you may not be working all the time like you're used to, or bringing money in all the time, and just your income can kind of fluctuate a little bit throughout this year. Then we've got Scorpio. So the North Node is in your 7th house of relationships, and the South Node is in your 1st house. So 7th house North Node is like really important relationships come into your life. You start meeting people that are a part of your destiny. Sometimes you'll meet people who you end up marrying or getting married to. Sometimes there are marriages or engagements that happen. Also, you may experience that there are really important partners financially that come into your life, or people who you make art with, or people who you make money with, because it's Taurus. You might just notice that there's just like an upward swing in relationships, and that there's a need to focus more on other people rather than yourself, because the North Node is there to help you. Now, the South Node in your first house, in the sign of Scorpio, is representing kind of like the loss of your old identity. So you're letting go of your ego, of who you used to be, which may be difficult for you because you want to hold on to that Scorpio aspect of yourself, which is, oh, I have to do it myself, or love is scary, relationships are scary, it's easier to be alone, I always get hurt, what's the point? I kind of see this as like you learning to take your guard down. Even if you're in relationships, it's like you're going to find that there's this profound shift. And if you're not really willing to let go of who you used to be, or all of the fears or all of the blocks and the armor that you wear that keep you from other people, then you're going to have some strife in your relationships, especially with Uranus going through your 7th house. So as Uranus goes through your 7th house, it's later this year in the summer, it's going to connect with the North Node, and it's going to score Saturn. So Scorpios may experience changes of where they're living, you know, having to kind of find ways to communicate with a partner better about home life, relocations, buying property. If family needs help, you might have to put your head together with another person and do what makes sense for the family and relocate, take care of parents, things like that. That can happen. And as Saturn and Uranus square off with each other, it's really pushing you further into your destiny, into redefining how you live, redefining family, working on your emotions, and going deeper into relationships. And in many ways, relationships can actually be what saves you. And it can bring you people who are different and unique, but people who are very stable and loyal and committed to the process and kind of working with you. I would just say, don't fight change, be open. Jupiter is in your 5th house of children and true love. So sometimes you can get pregnant, and that's what kind of sends you into a tailspin, and suddenly you got to move, and then you got to get married. But also you can fall in love with someone or something very deeply this year, and it can really expand your relationships, especially in the spring. So a lot to look forward to for that. For Sag and Sag rising, this is the North Node in your 6th house, the South Node in your 12th house. So the North Node in your 6th house is really putting a lot of emphasis on your routines, your health, your schedule. You know, do you need to hire people to help you with work? Do you need to find new doctors? Do you need to find new trainers, people who can help you with your eating habits specifically and relationships with food? Do you need to be hiring people and paying people to help you get things done? You know, do you need nannies, dog walkers? Do you need house cleaners? Are you starting a new business? Are you getting involved in a business that is involved with Taurus things? So are you opening a cafe? Are you going to pastry school? Are you making your own dog food? You know, like all these like 6th house things, which can incorporate Taurus, and also the 6th house, which is more of like a Virgo energy. It's a helpful energy. I think you really benefit by finding ways to make big changes in your daily schedule, so you can get to a point where you can do more work that feels creative and beautiful and indulgent and things like that. So that's definitely something that I would think about, just kind of like food for thought. You may find that there's like a need to change your dietary habits, or changing the way that you're working out, or anything like that. And there's just lots of shifts going on at work. You might be shifting into a new type of work. You might be shifting into a new routine, changing your hours. Things like that can kind of happen for you this year. With the South Node that's hanging out in your 12th house, it's very mystical, very magical. You're letting go of pain, trauma, fear, self-isolation. There's lots of clearing coming when you're sleeping and from your past lives. So it may be a good idea to consider like past life regression, hypnotherapy, trauma therapy. These can all be things that can shine a light on why you have the patterns and the habits that you do, and how to make healthier ones happen. There can be a sense also of you just like tapping into all of these weird dreams that can come up for you that are really tied to your past lives that may be very traumatic. I've seen that a lot for South Node and Scorpio in the 12th. And there can be all kinds of like spiritual clearings that can happen as a result of that, if you stick with it and you stay the course. You'll also learn about how like your stress and your anxiety or trauma actually affects your health in general. So there can be all of these things that are strange and mysterious that are affecting your health. And then the more that you dig into the psychological roots of them, you'll actually find healing and clearing. So that can be wonderful. So now we have Cap and Cap rising. We have the North Node in your 5th house, and we have the South Node in your 11th house. So Capricorn, really exciting time for you. Having the North Node go into your 5th house is going to all be about having fun, taking chances, taking risks, which is not really associated with Taurus. It's more stable. So you might be like just slowly dipping your toe in the water of like learning how to invest, or maybe every once in a while going to a casino, opening your heart more, be more willing to date and fall in love, being more willing to take risks when it comes to your creative self-expression and what you're investing into in terms of your hobbies. I think that this is also like a time where if you're like trying to get pregnant, it can be really positive because the eclipses and also the North Node transit over the summer can literally be suddenly finding out that you're pregnant, or trying to raise children in a more unconventional way. Your kids may be a little bit more wild than usual if you already have children. The North Node there also really reiterates the need to really find love and pleasure, which is so cool for you because, you know, you've got so many other things that are kind of shaping up in your chart that really seems to indicate that's what's coming as long as you open your heart and you're willing to be more expressive, right? Now with the South Node being in the 11th house, you're moving away from groups, so you might notice there's just some shifts in some friendships, or you're letting some friendships go, or it's not all about you supporting groups, it's more about you putting your own creative content out there. So if you've been the person who's been party organizer, and if you're promoting other people's accomplishments, and if you're the friend that's always just like, yeah, everybody's doing things, but I'm not having fun or creating because I'm working, that's going to shift a little bit, and your goals are going to shift a little bit as well. I think you're also just going to notice that with the South Node and Scorpio in your 11th house, you're going to want to move away from friendships that are kind of toxic or dramatic or draining, like energy vampire friendships, or friends that are just friends for their own well-being, their own benefit. Yeah, you're going to like really kind of drop the drama when it's in the 11th house and move away from people who don't allow you to shine as well, right? Having the Jupiter transit in your 3rd too makes me feel like you might be writing more. You might be just focusing more on getting into a constant state of self-expression. So that can be one way that you do it. The 5th house can be like doing stand-up. It can be acting. It can be, you know, honing in on your skills with floral or flowers because it's Taurus. Maybe you take a floral arrangement class. Maybe you decide that you want to learn more about gardening. Something like that can kind of pan out for you. For Aquarius and Aquarius rising, this is a North Node transit for you in your 4th house of home, family, and roots, and a South Node transit in your 10th house of career. So this is really highlighting like the need to really focus on where you're living, and the experiences that you're actually having with home, right? Eventually, when the North Node meets with Uranus later this summer, you might move into a communal living situation. You might want to buy land that can have multiple units on it. You might want to move in with friends. You and your family might have to pack up and move somewhere. All of the 4th house is really putting emphasis on how do you feel? Do you feel safe? Do you like where you're living? Do you want to get more down to basics? Do you want to live in a way that feels more natural and that it's more secure? So I've seen a lot of like Aquarius and Aquarius risings that are like, I want to go buy land. I want to grow my own food. I want to have enough security and stability. So if and when the world changes, I know that I'm going to be solid. Food for thought. I think that that may happen. I think right now there's a lot of you orchestrating, trying to figure out how that can kind of come together. And with the South Node in your 10th house, it's like you're letting go of an old identity of I have to be working all the time, or I have to be, you know, the boss. I have to be the really strict parent. So you move away from 10th house career responsibility, toxic work environments. Maybe you're killing off an old way that you used to work and you're adopting something new. Some of you guys may be wanting to start home businesses or working from home, working in real estate, working in agriculture, working in healing, or any of the fields that deal with like intuitive arts. I think like home design also could be something. So like, you know, architecture, feng shui, maybe going and flipping houses. These all might be things that really interest you, or some kind of home or family business. And you might be feeling the need to like protect your family. You might be like, oh my gosh, my family's kind of imploding and there's all kinds of things happening and people going in different directions. And like, how do I bring everybody together and find security and stability? and how that kind of plays out for you personally. It's going to be interesting when you factor in the summer and you kind of see some of the transits that are going to happen in Leo, and if a relationship factors into that as well, and how you guys kind of find the middle ground. And last but not least, we have Pisces and Pisces rising. You've got the North Node going through your 3rd house and the South Node's going through your 9th. So North Node in the 3rd house is more about communication, sharing ideas, writing. It can be about media. It can be about learning new things, but basic level things. So I think of like the North Node and Taurus in the 3rd is like focusing more on just maybe writing or communicating on a daily basis. There can be this focus on like wanting to create media or content. So think like writing workshops or putting out how-to videos or creating a YouTube channel or producing a podcast. These can all be things that can come from that. I think of like the North Node in the 3rd house as the need to really work hard on these things, like working hard on how you communicate and kind of simplifying the writing process or simplifying the learning process. New neighborhoods can come about, so you might think about moving or looking at other areas. You might have an interest in learning a new language. That can be something else that pans out for you during this time. So languages might prove to be something that's really important, and whether that's just how you relate to other people or if you're wanting to travel more in general, you might be like adopting a new language. Then we have the South Node in your 9th house. So that materializes as you being in a situation where you are letting go of what you used to believe in, or you're letting go of ways of being in the past. Scorpio in the 9th house is like, oh, maybe I don't relate to this anymore. I don't resonate with this belief system anymore. Like it's kind of toxic, and I'm realizing like it's not really helping me. You can drop college classes. You can make changes in your major. You can make a decision to let go of an old religious belief as well. You may cut ties with gurus or particular people who have been mentors or people who have been helping you and supporting you for some time. That's something else that can happen. I'm optimistic though, because you've got Jupiter and Neptune in your sign. So it's actually making sextiles to Taurus. So following your intuition is so important, especially when it comes to traveling and places where you feel like you need to be. You might find yourself in places that you're really connected to karmically from past lives, and you're going and visiting those places and having healing. And it's also making trines to your 9th house. So it's almost like you're learning not to believe in a structured, organized belief system. You're learning to believe in yourself and learning more about yourself and believing more in the direction and where your life is going, and trying to rely less on what people tell you you should do or what is meant to happen. You're relying more on where you are right now and what you're feeling right now. So hopefully this is helpful for you guys. I'm sure that I will be back. I'm going to talk more as these transits are kind of taking place. We have some time before we get to March and we start seeing the Mars-Pluto conjunction. Let me know, where are the eclipses and where are the nodes moving in your chart? Is it hitting any particular planets for you? How is it materialized for you already? What's playing out for you in that sense? As always, I love being able to do these videos. I appreciate you guys supporting the channel. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that bell button so you can get notified when I'm making videos in the future. If you'd like to book a reading with me, check out my links below. You can find my social media and also my website at beyondtheveiledtarot.com. If you would like to get a one-on-one astrology, tarot, clairvoyant reading combination in the future. Otherwise, I will see all of you guys very soon. You take care, and thanks for watching.